What's good, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of Highlighting Hues, and I got Gabriel Flores up in the building, a special guest. I'm excited to hear his story. I'm excited to let y'all hear more about Gabriel. How I met him. He has his own podcast, y'all. That's how I met him. I met him because he was being his platform, and it's all a connection when it comes to entrepreneurs, people driving in our desired directions, building, and the reason why what made me go on Shades of Entrepreneur podcast, which he's the host of, and he's going to tell you more about that, was a friend of mine, Devon Horace. He said, "Hey, I'm about to be on Shades of Entrepreneur podcast. Tune in, blah, blah, blah." I said, "Cool. I want to hear more. What do you got to say? I want to hear this platform." And I'm a people watcher, especially in the industry. And I went to Gabriel's website and I just studied him. And I was like, oh, in his platform, what he's doing. And I said, these are the type of people I want to connect with and be a part of. And he adds so much value to entrepreneurs, content creators. He's a creative. He'll tell you more about his company as well. I'm happy to have him on this podcast. And I listened to Devon's story on his podcast, and I listened to Gabriel and other guests, and that so much value to us, free value out there, free game. And he talked about the behind the scenes, the rough, the good, bad, and ugly of just entrepreneurship and just real awesome stuff. But anyway, I'm happy. He's used to interviewing people. I'm happy that he's sitting in the chair being questions is going at him, and I get to know more about my brother right here. Anyway, if you don't know Gabriel, I started this podcast because specifically for my kids, and I want them to see highlighted. I want to highlight humans that are color melanated humans, highlighting hues. I'm thinking of graphic design right now, so I'm thinking, I wanted to highlight. I want my kids to see melanated, minority, de-emphasize humans to be on a platform to talk about their thought leadership, entrepreneur, creative journey, and they're just intelligence, resilience, and you are one of them. And I'm just that long introduction. I probably have to edit. Now is your turn, and I want to know, how would you describe Gabriel and who you are? And yes.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for the introduction and bring me on the show. Really am thankful to be on the show. Really am thankful to be a part of this community, to be truly honest with you. My name's Gabriel Flores. I'm actually born and raised here in Oregon. I started out as a farmer boy down in a small town called Mount Angel, Oregon. So if you aren't familiar with Mount Angel, the Oktoberfest, it's coming up in the next couple of weeks. Hopefully we'll see you down there. We had about 2,600 or about 3,600 folks that are living in that town. For us, really, there was no traffic light. So traffic for us was kind of just waiting behind livestock to kind of cross the road kind of thing. But yeah, I'm born and raised here in Oregon, really focusing on the Oregon community. How do we kind of build this community of entrepreneurs, but also inspire those individuals? The way I kind of created my podcast, The Shades of Entrepreneurship, is really focusing on really the Oregon entrepreneur. I was actually going to grad school at Syracuse University during the pandemic. The pandemic hits, all of a sudden my school goes, virtual everything. And so during that time, I'm thinking to myself, here I'm sitting here reading all of these case studies of these entrepreneurs, and I'm paying all this money to do it. Yet we have all these great stories here in the Pacific Northwest that we can be sharing as well. And so that's really where the concept began to formulate. And I got so much support Luel, I think you're probably seeing it as well in this community, just so much support from the Oregon community and just in the business community as a whole, reaching out to us and providing their time as entrepreneurs, providing their time. Individuals kind of saying, hey, this is another person you might want to look into. It's just been really, really fascinating to, I'm just going to kind of drop a few, like Rick Trozy, shout out to Rick Trozy, just really doing support of Devon. You mentioned Devon, he's been doing a phenomenal job over at Alberta Street. And for those listening, next week, last Thursday, Alberta Street, go check it out. The last of the month, always, in the summertime. But there's just been some really, unique people that really have helped supported the growth. And that's kind of where the Shades of Entrepreneurship kind of came about. But, really the kind of goal is to also identify the diversity of entrepreneurism, because there are so many different diverse entrepreneurs. I've been doing food cart people. I've been doing people that make charcuterie boards, people that make candles, and then people that are coaches, right? Professional executive coaches, or people that have scaled their business to be a national company. And it's just been very unique because, I think, yourself, Lou, I've learned quite a bit from you. In fact, for those folks that are listening, actually connected with Luell just 2 weeks ago, or last week, I believe it was, to kind of say, hey, I need you to drop some knowledge on this digital world. How do I make some of these video marketing things, and sharing the knowledge in that sense. And so, I've been doing this, the podcast, I guess, for about a year now. I actually work in healthcare. That's actually where my bread and butter is. I've been in healthcare for a little over, 23 years now at Oregon Health and Science University. Started up there when I was about 15. And so that's really where my passion comes into our community, because really in what I'm doing at OHSU is really going out to every single one of these communities throughout our state to try to fortify what they're doing in their communities, to really limit their need to drive all the way up to Portland Metro for quality healthcare, right? They can have the great quality healthcare in Medford or in Ashland or in Burns or in all these different locations, but they sometimes just need a little bit of the support, just like we did, right? I needed some support on some stuff. I'm gonna reach out to Luell. I'm gonna need some support on some, operational thing. I might reach out to Rick Medeiros over there in Burnside Knives, and just a lot of different people that you can kind of reach out to really kind of help get support. Because at the end of the day, I'm not a jack of all trades, master of none. I know what I'm good at, but when I'm not good at, I don't try to master it. I outsource it. Pick somebody else who's better at it, then kind of take it from there. But that's kind of who I am in a nutshell. The youngest of four, born and raised, as I mentioned, here in Oregon. Really, if you ate strawberries back in the 90s around the Salem area, you're more than likely are probably eating from some strawberries that I picked with my hands. But other than that, I'm just really all about the community, really trying to engage, our Oregon individuals and what we're trying to do here in the Pacific Northwest, just to kind of highlight what we're doing not only on a national level, but also on a statewide level, because I think it's easy to forget what the individuals and the communities away from the Portland metro area are doing. And so what I'm hopefully doing is not only highlighting what we're doing in the Pacific Northwest, but also highlighting to other Oregonians what we're doing here in the state as well.
Man, that is so dope. And you just added you out there. That's what we like to say, you out there doing it. And what I hear passion, and I hear vision, and I hear legacy, which lines up with my values. As I hear you talking, I hear the passion of being involved, helping out. Then you mentioned the health aspect, and it's like, and you trying to create solutions within that. And also you talking about, working with entrepreneurship, and just talking to you already made me helped me examine my business and stuff like that. Even the way we talked about communicating to one another and trading each other's gifts and talents to help each other out, and how the value in relationship, the value in trading, the value in bartering, and we don't always have to think a transactional trade of conversation or just expertise, and help each other out. I think you doing a great job showing an example that even just talking to you, and the way your podcast has so much value. It's connecting so many different, like you said, diverse industries. And I think that's so dope. And so I hear passion, vision, and legacy. The legacy part is you making a difference long term, and making healthcare accessible and all that type of stuff. And I just think it's dope, and I commend you for that. And it's like the next question I was going to ask you is like, man, what is your brand? But we can get more into that, and we can talk about how many podcast episodes you have speaking on that.
So the podcast, I essentially started the podcast, really, as I mentioned, during the pandemic, to kind of highlight the Northwest entrepreneur. but really the brand behind it is actually called Creatively Insane. Now, Creatively Insane was created as kind of a production studio, so to speak. It's still in its infancy, and so you may see some pivot or different iterations, and sometimes as the future kind of unfolds a little bit more, right? But essentially, what the focus is really is on is providing an opportunity for entrepreneurs everywhere to kind of really exercise their own kind of creativity. So, for example, the goal really behind Creatively Insane is to one day own some brick and mortar multi-use spaces, and those multi-use spaces will house, a podcast location, so individuals can actually rent out that space, and they can use that space to record their own podcast without having to purchase all this equipment. They can just rent that information out. In addition to that, we'll have professionals there that can help you edit or train you how to edit your own podcast, how to help you market, how to help you see those SEOs and things of that nature.
Wow.
Things that we're still learning how to do. It's really essentially a think tank, right? And so that's one section of this multi-use building. In addition to that, they could be, I really am fond of barbershops, and because I feel like that plays a huge part of the community. So I would love to have a barbershop inside of this multi-use location. In addition to that, I really would love to have a creative section, kind of a bit of a open space so these individuals can create their own items, but then have a actual brick and mortar store in that multi-use building that actually is selling the products and wares that some of these entrepreneurs are actually creating, right? Again, really emphasizing the shades of entrepreneurship, because I want to really emphasize the difference, the vast differentiations of entrepreneurs we have out there, the vast differentiations of the technology, the vast differentiations of the industry. You can go very, very, far as far as the difference of you see of what's making sense and what's not. But not only that, it's kind of creating a space to network. You and I have been talking about it often. Is I feed off of other people because I learn from them, right? I'm always talking about failing fast because that's the fastest way to learn, right? Well, I used to have a clothing line back in the day, SLM Apparel. Had no clue what the heck I was doing. Went back to Portland State, tried to learn business school. But I realized that when I failed with SLM Apparel so quickly, that really propelled me to grow exponentially, because it was that opportunity that said, you know what, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I'm going to go back and get some a little bit more education, either through professional schooling. That's not always the route you have to go through. So please don't say, hey, Gabe's saying I need to go to college in order to become a businessman. Completely not. That was just that happened to be the route I chose. There are certainly multiple routes, and really the end goal, right? As I mentioned, creating this multi-facet use building for a lot of these entrepreneurs, maybe having an apartment on the upper side of it as well, just to kind of create that residual income. But the goal is to really create a space for entrepreneurs to create. Right. One podcast, in fact, for those folks that are listening, if you don't already listen to Builders Build by Colin Landforce and Orion and those teams, that is one of, it's kind of funny. I actually had Colin on my podcast, and Colin's a perfect example of an entrepreneur taking something and doing it better. He basically took my concept of, interviewing entrepreneurs, but he does it so much better. I swear. So the Builders Build podcast is a great podcast because it got a lot of technical things in it. Talks about, CRMs, talks about SEOs, talks about it gets a little bit more in depth of from the technical perspective. But again, the goal for the Creatively Insane is really to create a space for individuals to create, and then also have an opportunity for them to sell their products, but also learning at the same time. My goal is not to bring in entrepreneurs and tell them how to do it. I'm more of the, see one, do one, teach one concept, right? I want them to see what I'm doing, and then I can teach them how to do it, and then they can go do it themselves, And so, I'm maybe not the best businessman because, they say, teach a man to fish and you'll go poor kind of thing. That's fine. There's a lot of people that need to learn how to fish. That doesn't make me, I'm going to be poor. That just actually makes my community's going to be richer. Right. And I would much rather have a rich community than be a rich man in a poor community.
I like that.
So really where I'm at.
And that reflects everything that the brick and mortar that you're describing. It sounds definitely creatively insane. You know what I mean? In a dope way. Because as you was talking, I see so many moving parts. But it's also so cohesive, and is innovative too, and I think it's much needed. And I think the way you will pull it off in a way, your flavor, and so many different people and stuff, and man, and you're easily, to me, outside looking in, your platform is very attractive, especially when people step in the door and they listen and they see what you're doing, the infrastructure you're building. And all that to say is that you telling me the big vision. How did you get to this point? You touched up on a little bit when you talked about some schooling, and I know you just finished Syracuse, which that's dope. That's tight. That was one of my fun colleges of I come from a sports family. I'm the youngest out of 5. You said you're the youngest out of 4. And we watched Donovan McNabb back in the day playing at Syracuse. So ever since then, we played him in college football games, my brother. And it's always respected at university from afar. Back up from the picking strawberries in the field, that hard work. I have experience doing that actually, and back in LA. But all that to say is to your journey, I just want to hear more of how did you get to this, your education, to how was high school like.
Yeah, great question. So high school for me, to be honest with you, I think if you ask the folks that I went to high school with where I would be when I was in high school, they certainly don't believe I would be where I'm at right now, to be honest with you.
And how old are you? I'm sorry. Can I ask that question? Is that okay?
In fact, great question, because I literally just turned 39 2 days ago, or actually 3 days ago, August 19th. So not too far along.
Wow.
So, in high school, I played all the sports. To be honest with you, I was the jock. I was also one of the guys that once sports was over, so was school for me, in my opinion, right? So I went to school in the fall and played football, and then I went to school in the winter and played basketball. But I didn't play, baseball and track. So once that spring term came around, Mr. Flores was hard to find around those school halls during those times, But that's not to say I didn't enjoy school. I really enjoyed school. In fact, I still have a lot of great friends that I still talk to back from Mount Angel as well. But, really, I came from a community of entrepreneurs. These are all individuals. They're farmers. They're the small town store owners. They own the bars. They own the small gas station there. And these are all family owned locations. Sometimes they're multiple generations deep. And it's really kind of, for me, creating this, endeavor was really focusing on just my roots, right? Mm. How do I highlight, what my community did, what my family did? I'm an indigenous migrant from this community. So I'm from South Leon, Texas. So South Leon, my heritage can be traced back to 16 or 1400 or something crazy like that. And really what we were focusing on then is just migrating and really kind of cultivating the lands, going up and down the east and south, up and down the eastern coast and the western coast, going all the way up to New York to pick cucumbers, and then back down over to California. And that's really how my parents decided to migrate here in the Oregon area. Now, as far as the high school goes, I was, as I mentioned, I rarely would attend those spring terms, and so in truth, when it was my senior year, time to graduate high school, my college counselor really didn't see much need to put emphasis on education. And so in truth, they kind of stated when I think, but yeah, so in high school, as I mentioned, my high school counselor, I kind of went through, it was, one of the things about me too is when I was growing up, I was actually put into an IEP, a learning thing. Well, IEP stands for Individual Educational Program. Now, during that time, I must admit, I think this is where my imposter syndrome really started to set in for me as a young adult. And this is actually, I think it might even be before that. As I mentioned, my name is Gabriel Flores, but people started calling me Gabe around the second grade. And so my name changed at a very young age, and I kind of forgotten who I was. And I'm like, I'm Gabe. Well, who's this Gabriel person? And I must admit, hasn't been until recently I've kind of come to have comfort with my name being Gabriel, and kind of, am preferred, and I'm okay with people calling me Gabriel, when in the past I never felt that way. And, being an IEP student in school and having this sense of, you feel dumb, to be honest with you. You're having your teachers pull you out of classes because you're unable to, speak this language in a proficient manner, or your dyslexia is kind of kicking in. And so these math problems, even though you're writing the correct solution, the answer's coming out incorrectly because the letters that you're putting down aren't matching up in the textbook, because that dyslexia sometimes kind of gets a little funky, right? And so those things, kind of crushed me. And I must admit, growing up, I didn't feel I was smart enough to own a business. I wasn't smart enough to go to school anyways. And in truth, my high school counselor at the time, she stated, when I finally had the determination around my junior year that I'm going to go ahead and start taking some of these classes. I wanted out of the IEP program. If I'm gonna fail these courses, let me fail them with my classmates. Let them fail them with my friends, and if that happens, and so be it. I'll take it from there. But if not, then I move forward. And I never failed a class in high school. But it was still that junior year when my counselor was like, I think it's best that you just, instead of taking, more difficult math classes, since you had been struggling in the previous ones, why don't you instead focus on something easy, like being a teacher's assistant or doing weights in PE, seeing things that were, not very challenging from an educational perspective. And I did that. I did 2 solid years of weights in PE. I was a PA, teacher's assistant, and just really kind of, skated my time through that process. And I must admit, it wasn't until, working at Oregon Health and Science University, I had an individual reach out to me, and she's like, you can do so much more, than what you're doing. I believe in you, but you do believe in yourself. I didn't. I'll be completely honest with you. I didn't. I was one of those individuals. I was retired in place. I like to call them as an IRP employee, right? I was retired in place. I'd come to work and just do the bare minimum. I was good. There's also the cave employees, right? They're the CAVE, right? They're constantly against virtually everything, right? And I'm sure you folks that are listening probably know a cave employee, right? Who the parking sucks, the food is bad, the employees over here is always late or something, right? There's something always about that. And I think I was kind of getting to that point where I was about to become a cave employee. I was becoming a retired employee, or I was skating by just doing the bare minimum to becoming a cave employee. And she really kind of challenged me in a way that, not necessarily challenged me, but believed in me, which she then challenged me, which really made me believe in myself. It's quite impressive, what individuals can do when somebody else believes in them. Because as humans, I think it's sometimes difficult for us to believe in ourselves without somebody kind of behind our back saying, hey, you got it. No, don't get me wrong. There's some individuals that really probably don't have any issue believing in themselves, and kudos to them, right? Awesome. They're great extrovert people sometimes, maybe some introverts as well, who knows? Can't really generalize any of that, but there's these individuals that truly, really do believe in themselves. I was not one of those, right? I was one who, once I had somebody behind me and say, you know what, I believe in you, man, the rocket ship took off, right? That's really where I began to see the big picture, and I began to explore my creativity. So often, I think as kids in particular, we're told to like, hey, stop goofing around, stop making believe, stop. No, don't stop. Grab a color right now and start coloring. Grab a marker. Go paint something. Get your creative mind going, because that's where innovation starts, right? This creativity is where it sparks innovation. And I think for a long time, I had really suffocated in my creativity. I didn't want to be a creative. I wanted to be the straight line individual. I wanted to come to work. I wanted to get my paycheck, and I wanted to retire, right? And that's what I wanted to do, because that's what my world at that time was telling me. That's where my trajectory was lying. And then again, as I mentioned, this individual, Kimberly Bass, shout out to Kim Bass, former director of mine. She really, really kind of pushed me forward, and it's like, no, you got this. You're not going to just sit here anymore and do the crossword all day and pretend that, you don't care, because I know you care, and I'm going to prove it that you care. And not only that, but I'm going to engage you in some leadership roles. But in order for you to obtain these leadership roles, you're gonna have to show me some type of that you really truly want it. And what did that mean? Well, she encouraged me to go back to school. So I went back to Portland Community College. I didn't, you mentioned, I graduate, my grad school is at Syracuse. I didn't start at Syracuse. I started at the Portland Community College Panthers, baby. That's where I started, over at Sylvania campus, right. Mount Hood campus. And I went to all of them, right? Mm-hmm. Rock Creek, I've done it all. And I did that for 2 years. I did that for several years. And then once I was done with that and I felt, good, I finally went over to Portland State. And again, I think this kind of goes back to experience and kind of getting yourself out there and experiencing life. It was because of that college experiences. That's where I met my wife. First day of college, first day, sat right next to her at marketing class, intentionally was ready for her to talk to her. I was like, man, I got this. And she didn't even say a single word to me the entire class. Man, I was devastated, but consistency. The next had a different class. We had I think it was organizational behavior. And so being the strategist I am, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to see if I can get this girl's number. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to tell her, I will do all of the marketing homework if you do all of the organizational behavior homework. And then neither one of us have to do homework in 2 classes. We'll have to do 1. And sure enough, that kind of started just like a friendship of juices. And I got to admit, even learning from her, I get creativity from her. Every day she inspires me with what she's doing. She is a mother. She is a real estate agent. She is working in insurance. And she is my wife, which is that's probably like 5 jobs in itself, I got to tell you. And it's just women, truly what women can do. And I think that's really where I started getting this inspiration though from is from my family and people inspiring me and really believing in me and saying I can do these things. And then I think with the podcast was really funny. I had the idea and I'm telling people this is what I want to do. And it wasn't until my neighbor, Jeremy Inman, he's the CEO of Sandy Can. It's an outhouse. So it's kind of the competitor to Honey Buckets. I would say he's number 1 in the number 2 business, but, he actually told me, he's like, all right, are you ready? I was like, well, what do you mean? Are you ready? He's like, well, let's go record that interview. I'm ready to go. I'm the CEO, I'm an entrepreneur. Let's go. And his episode was the first episode. I really would recommend people going back and listen to that first episode. It was probably one of the best episodes I had, because he believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. I was learning a lot that episode. Now I'm not gonna say it's like the best content or anything like that. I'm just saying it was the best for me personally because I learned so much on that first one. I learned how to interview people. I learned how to control my voice. I learned how to ask questions that really prodded deep into what they were thinking. And this all came back to me because of the confidence that somebody else believed in me and said, hey, you can do it. That helped me. People always ask, how do you get in front of, a national conference and speak in front of 200 people? It's because somebody believed in me at some point. Somebody at some point believed in me that I can do it. And I started to do it. And then I realized okay, I can't do it. It's kind of like riding a bike, right? You don't believe you can ride the bike until somebody believes you can ride the bike. And then you take those trainer wheels off and you're like, holy crap, I'm riding the bike. I'm doing it right now. Now you're in the X Games there's some BMX doing some crazy things in a half pipe. You know what I mean? That's the next level, right? And everybody has that next level in them, right? Everybody can take what they're doing and take it to the next level. They just have to have sometimes they don't, but having a little bit of belief, have somebody else believe in you, man, that really can spark a lot. And because of that, now it's time for me to give back. Okay. Have all these people saying they believe in me and they can do it. Well, your word, the power of speech is the strongest weapon you will ever have in your life, ever. I'm sure, I'm a person of color. You're a person of color. And I'm sure individuals that are listening to this episode, they have probably been in a similar situation when they've been pulled over and they've been told, hands up and put your weapon down, right? But for me and for you, it's really hard to put our weapons down when the weapon they fear the most is the color of our skin. Now, add education to us, and we are a killer combo to anybody, because everybody is fearful of different things and change. And what's more scarier than a group of extremely educated people of color. That's something people haven't thought before. And we're going to change that. And that's really what my goal is. And it doesn't, pigment, white is a color too, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
You know, I'm talking every color. Okay. And so we all collectively, if we're able to pull each other up, I talk about this often, you know, climbing the corporate ladder. What I mean, you know, when I say, you know, when you're climbing the corporate ladder, it's important to reach down and help somebody up, because eventually you're going to fall down that corporate ladder, and it's who you helped climb up. They're going to be their hand that reach out to kind of prevent you from falling, kind of thing. And so now it's really, how do I give back to the community? How do I engage what we're doing? How do I not only engage, but inspire and educate at the same time, right? I'm trying to do quite a bit in a small 30, 45 minute show, but I hope that what people get out of it, you know, is really true, genuine belief that we can all do this. We are all a global economy. And if one of us is succeeding, we are all succeeding. But as one guest said, if our community is hurting, then our businesses are never going to do well, right?
So that makes you want, that. Wow. First of all, I'm encouraged you sharing your story all the way back to high school, the being on a IPA. Yeah, I have an older son and he has independent learning because of dyslexia struggles and stuff like that. Just don't click as easy. I have ADHD. And I was medicated for in 5th grade and everything because I couldn't sit down. I was not just only hyper, but it was just like I just could not focus. So it became a behavior issue. But it's amazing the breakthrough. Like, all right, let me just be real with you. I respect you, especially after hearing your stories, and I respect you even more. But I'm glad that you let me in on your early struggles and even recent overcomes and because the way I look at you, I was like, man, this dude, I look at your stuff, like I snatched all your podcast questions because you sent me a podcast. The way you're running your podcast is very legit. It's efficient. I can tell you did your research on how to do a podcast. You can do a whole masterclass, I think, on how to do a podcast. Because in the consistency, the guests you got lined up, I mean, you pumping out, just constantly pumping out. Your email that you do have, your monthly email or what? Yeah, the monthly email you have is just getting way more open rates, than above average open rates, all that type of stuff. And I'm seeing you now, hearing the stats, seeing the stats, and looking at and seeing what you're doing. Everything you're saying, you actually do. You're not just bullshitting. Like you're in the community, you out there, you're doing your stuff, connecting, networking, have vision. But to hear you talk about your struggle, feeling other at an early age, not with the rest of the students, and overcoming that, and that kind of gave you an identity of like, just go meet the status quo, do enough to get by. I don't know. It just your journey. But the way I see you now, it's like, man, this dude is confident. He knows what he's talking about. He got his shit together. You know what I mean? I know I don't look at anybody like, oh yeah, everybody's perfect. They got their stuff together. What I'm trying to say is that it's good for people to see under the hood of what they see now, because we don't see the process. We don't see the struggle, the imposter syndrome we had to come over. You have how many episodes of podcast episodes now?
Oh, I think we're reaching 80 or 90, almost getting to 100.
80. And you took us back to the first one, how you learned so much from that first one, and the power of people believing in you when you don't even believe in yourself, and they see you the way you don't see yourself, and the identity we created through our struggles and through the things we went through. And you mentioned your family, you mentioned your wonderful, beautiful wife and your wonderful, beautiful daughter, and I'm thinking about my wife, how she encouraged me. You know what I mean? She believed in me. I wouldn't believe. You talk about imposter syndrome. People see this confident. They see these shades. They're like, oh yeah, this dude got it. Yeah, he's cocky. He's confident. He's camera. Boy, I tell you, when you talk about insecurities, you talk about like the stuff to overcome, to be able to speak confidently in front of a camera and all that type of stuff, and imposter syndrome, the many lives over the years. I started a live 5 minutes. I just cut it off because I was like, what the hell I'm doing? You have no idea the struggles we go through and to get here, but to hear you and to see you where you at now and where you going, to hear that, I want my kids to hear that. I want other entrepreneurs to hear that. I want people to hear that.
And one thing I must admit, I had to learn too, is the difference between being confident and being cocky. Okay. Yeah. So when an individual is cocky, I was very cocky when I was younger. I was a really cocky high schooler, and that's because I didn't have confidence. I pretended to be cocky and made jokes about things because I felt, if I just joked about it, right, then people would overlook that actually I was actually didn't have the confidence in doing those things, right? And so I think as you grow, as we all grow, is to be mindful of that as well, and try to take that deep dive and think to yourself, am I being confident, right? Or am I being cocky? Am I really trying to do that point where like, I know I can't do this, but I'm going to try to do it to just try to prove people wrong. It's okay to go ask for help. Everybody at some point in time started at the same starting line. Right? Just because someone might be further along in the race than you are doesn't mean they didn't have help, right? They had to learn this information. Nobody was born, speaking any language, right? This is something we all learn, right? We all learn. And so having an opportunity to learn from others, you're talking about networking. I can't even explain the importance of networking and getting in a community and building a base and really building the community around you of individuals that are going to help. They want to see you succeed and that you want to succeed, right? You want to help them succeed as well. But, kind of growing, just being mindful of the difference between that cocky and confidence is very important. But also knowing like it's okay to ask for help. And get rid of the whole, we need the perfection. Stop following those social media accounts that are specifically catered for perfection. They have teams behind them that are creating reels. I have a reel. I did it myself. I still got like 300, 400 people looking at it on TikTok. And that was just me. And that was before I had a Blue L to teach me how to do, spit some game, get a little bit more acclimated in what I'm doing. But knowing that you have the opportunity to go and ask for help, and don't be ashamed of that. I think there's too much stigma in people thinking that I can't ask for help because then I'm dumb. No, it's dumb when you don't ask for help and then you make a stupid decision that you're kind of, up shit creek without a paddle because you have to deal with that. And it's worse when it comes to a business decision, because now you're dealing with, thousands of dollars, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars, possibly millions of dollars, right? Those are big, big mistakes. It's easier to go ask for somebody. We're very lucky. We're living in a time right now where everything you could possibly want to know is either available in your pocket on that little square thing that you probably carry around your pocket right now called your phone, or on the internet, right? You can go and you can read about all of these things, but the difference is taking the time to read it. Taking the time and going to educate yourself, or networking with people that have read it and learning from them. Right. There are various options, but that's one thing I would kind of be, tell the listeners just to be mindful of is understand there's a difference between cocky and confidence. And sometimes it's a blurry line. And even for others, I think people like myself, yourself, I think individuals of color tend to struggle with that as well, because no matter what, our cockiness or our confidence tends to be conceived as being cocky, and I will, so I kind of say it with a grain of salt, to understand your difference between cocky and confidence, but also understand where that feedback is coming from. And sometimes there are underlined, biases that maybe that individual might not even know about, right? Those unconscious biases that sometimes people aren't aware of, but sometimes they're biases that they are aware of, and they're doing it intentional as well. And so just be mindful of that, because at the end of the day, we're the average of the 5 people we hang out with the most, and so if you hang out with people that are constantly doubting you, you're probably going to doubt yourself the rest of your life. But if you hang out with people that are constantly pushing you forward, like I trying to surround myself and continuously surround myself with, you're going to continue to succeed, because those are the people that are going to continue to make sure you succeed. You're going to say you're going to do something, or they're going to basically make sure they're backing up. All right, you said you're going to do it. Let's do it. How do we get there? How do I help you? Right. And so just being mindful of the haters are out there. Right. Yeah. But that your support, is quite grand. In fact, your biggest supporter is probably somebody you've never met. Right. And your biggest hater is probably somebody you already know. So get out there, network, meet new people, and learn from other people, because that's really what this community I'm trying to build is about. This community of entrepreneurs is really, how do we build each other up? How do we learn from each other? Because at the end of the day, my goal is to decrease the small business failure rate. When we're having 80% small businesses fail in the first 5 years, that's not good. How do we help? How do we educate? How do we make sure that we're providing, like I mentioned in the race earlier, how do I make sure I'm providing my community with enough information so when they start that race, they're not starting at just that finish line. Maybe they're starting at the 100-yard mark, or the 200-yard mark, or the 300-yard mark, and they only have to run 400 yards. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to give them just a little leg up on the race of life to try to at least finish feeling good about themselves. And even if you don't finish, that's okay too. It's not, you can be an entrepreneur working in a corporate organization. In fact, Frito-Lay's, I always talk about Frito-Lay's Red Hot Cheetos. Red Hot Cheetos was actually created by the custodian there. He actually pitched the idea to the CEO. They're going to be making a movie out of it soon enough. Pitched the idea to the CEO. He's like, hey, when I go home, this is what I do with my Cheetos. I put some hot sauce in it. Now the Red Hot Cheetos, boom. Now he's the VP of the Red Hot Cheetos line, from a custodian to the VP of an entire service line. So, don't think that just because you're working in the corporate setting that you don't have an entrepreneurial spirit, or that you can't be an entrepreneur. You just have to think outside the box of what that means, right?
Yeah, man, that's so good. I like you distinguish between, cocky and confidence, and also perceived cockiness and different biases and all that type of stuff, but also touched on too. And I'm glad you touched on too, the 9-to-5 entrepreneur, or you can still invest. You can still invest in real estate, stocks as a 9-to-5 entrepreneur. I'm glad to speak to that. And that's huge advice that you just gave, that you've been given for the last, all through the podcast, is spitting game of your knowledge. And you pretty much answered all the questions I was going to ask. And I know you got to leave here soon. And I just where can people find you?
Yeah, so for those interested, first and foremost, I want to take a quick minute to thank Lowell for what he's doing in his show and what he's doing for the community. Again, he's also doing some amazing things. Please listen and tune into his podcast, because I think he's dropping a lot of knowledge and bringing a lot of guests that provide a lot of great insight for the community and what's happening. As far as for me, for the Shades of Entrepreneurship, you can follow us at theshadesofe.com. I'm pretty much at the Shades of E everywhere. So Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, just at the Shades of E. I'm always looking to network, so you can also find me on LinkedIn. Look for Mr. Gabriel Flores on LinkedIn, so you can find me on my personal account. Always happy to connect with people. Always happy to meet and learn. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm like a sponge, right? I'm trying to absorb as much. And the way I look at it, if I'm not getting comparatively better, I'm getting competitively worse, and I hate losing.
I love that. I could sense a little competitive in a good way. All that to say is that thank you for being on this podcast, and thank you for dropping your wisdom. And also, look out for the stuff that Gabriel is coming up with. From Gabe to Gabriel, it seems like the more we embrace ourselves, the more potential we tap into within ourselves and what we do. This has been great. Thank y'all for tuning in, and peace. I'm out.